What's up guys, it's Endymion, and unlike many of you who likely are celebrating Christmas with your families, I decided to spend a few hours torturing myself with Netflix's newest gift that it shat out of its rectum for us to enjoy. The Witcher Blood Origin is a limited series that acts as a prequel to the main story. It's also completely fabricated and done without The Witcher's creator Andrzej Sapkowski having any say. Or if he did, I'm sure Netflix blinded him with buckets of money so he wouldn't complain. Also, I won't be using footage from the show because Netflix is really anal about this kind of stuff, so I'll be using screenshots that I took with my phone while watching this dumpster fire, which may look terrible, but to be honest, this show doesn't deserve any proper treatment. Also, spoilers for Blood Origin, I guess, if that matters to you at all, but as you watch on, you'll see that it really doesn't matter. Regardless, let's start with what works before we get into the cesspool that awaits. I would honestly say that the first episode is actually pretty good. In fact, it has a decent tone and sets the stage for what's to come in a solid way. Another positive would be the two main characters here, Fial and Islay. Fial is from the Dog Clan and an elven protector to the royal family of Zentrea. He ends up getting banished from the kingdom after being caught banging the royal princess, which, I mean, good for him. Fial is easily the best character in the show, as he's both believable when it comes to how he's portrayed, and his actor does a really great job with what's given to him. The other main character is Islay, a bard from the Raven Clan who leaves her assassin days behind her in search of something more. Like I said, the first episode works because there's not too many characters that you have to follow. The general gist is that the continent is being starved for resources due to endless wars between the various nations. And while the Elven Prince looks to unite the kingdoms to stop this, the royal mages are influenced by a mysterious force into opening portals to new worlds. These new worlds are seen as opportunities by the elves to gain more resources for their people, and during a summit meeting between the various kingdoms, a massive monster dawns out of nowhere onto the royalty and basically wipes out everybody and their advisors within seconds. In this moment, the entirety of Dog Clan, Raven, and so on are all seemingly wiped out, and this allows the royal family of Zentrea to seize power over everything and unite the continent under one rule, dubbed the Golden Empire. So far, this is all a pretty good setup for a prequel show. We have the last two remaining warriors of Dog and Raven clan vowing to kill the Zentrean royalty for their betrayal, and that's how the first episode ends. Unfortunately, after this point, everything starts to crumble spectacularly. Like I said before, had the show just focused on Fial and Islay, it could have been a decent story. But unfortunately, Netflix decides to add various other characters to the main cast, from a crazy dwarf girl who talks to her hammer and some other people who honestly, I don't remember their names as they don't do much until near the end of the show, or if that, if I'm being honest. The first big reveal that just made me laugh out loud was when they showed Avallac'h, who, if you remember, was in Witcher 3. He was the mysterious elven mage that helped Ciri deal with the White Frost. So this is Avallac'h in Blood Origin, and Jesus. And talk about a miscast. Like, no offense to the actor, but dude, when I think of a powerful elven mage, I don't think of the guy from Ratatouille, but this is surprisingly not the worst thing. Another major character in the show is Eredin, who you may recognize as being the leader of the Wild Hunt and the main antagonist in Witcher 3. For the most part, Eredin feels very underutilized here and also gets revealed to be secretly gay as well, because of course he is. Apparently this moment was very big for Netflix, as their marketing department decided it was more important we know that two men are kissing amongst other things than, you know, telling a good story. Here, just watch this.
I can give you 1,000. The cast are insane.
The action is fierce.
It's got Michelle Yeoh, who is, I mean, you already know that, but she's just incredible.
It's set 1,000 years before The Witcher.
It explores part of the lore of The Witcher that hasn't been explored before.
There are monsters like we've never seen before.
It has the first kiss between two men in the show.
The costumes are divine. The makeup, the hair, Bon appetit.
There's a deaf sign language using character.
It's a show that's made with so much love, and that's really fun.
The dichotomy of the first episode's polish and quality compared to the rest of the show should be studied for how fast things can turn sour in modern entertainment. And as the cast bloats, the story starts to suffer quite a bit as well. We go from a revenge story about two badass warriors to a gang of forgettable nobodies very quickly. There's also a deaf character introduced who does literally nothing for the entire show, and I'm not kidding. She's simply there for representation's sake, and so Netflix can parade the actress around in front of media to show how inclusive they are.
There's a deaf sign language using character.
Oh yeah, she also dies in the last episode, and she even has a septum piercing, because of course she does. There's a lot of action scenes that I kind of already don't remember, but the only one that stood out to me was where Fial, Aile, and Sion, played by Michelle Yeoh, fend off Zintrean soldiers in a dwarven bank. As for the other fight scenes, it's nothing compared to, say, Henry Cavill's Geralt butchering dudes in season 1. And it also has ridiculous moments like seeing the little dwarf lady killing fully grown men with her hammer. I just couldn't take any of this seriously, and it's astounding how bad things keep getting as the show progresses. Now let's get to one of the bigger sins of the show, starting with the creation of the first Witcher. I thought it would have been Michelle Yeoh who becomes the first one, but it ends up being Fial. The entire transformation feels pretty ridiculous, especially since the first recorded Witchers don't even exist until after the conjunction has already happened. But here we have Sindril, one of the royal mages, suggesting to use a heart of a monster that they found in another world to give Fial the power to kill that big monster that killed all the royalty in episode 1. Eventually, Fial and Aile end up falling for each other too, and they kiss the night before the first official trial of the grasses. Even though, again, this concept never existed until after the conjunction of the spheres, which, by the way, hasn't happened yet. Of course, Netflix could just say that Fial's transformation was just never documented, and that's why it's lost to time, which conveniently explains this mess. But don't worry, I know this sounds bad, but believe me, it gets so much worse. Now we're in episode 3 and Fial is a Witcher, I guess, and the big plan is to fake Fial's capture, and while wearing the armor of Zintrean soldiers, the main characters can then walk into the palace and Trojan horse everything. While this trope has been done to death, it's especially hilarious because you have the little dwarf woman even wearing Zintrean armor when there's no dwarves in the Zintrean military. So who made her the small suit of armor that she's wearing? Maybe there was a dwarf during the ambush where they got the armor, but to be honest, I was so preoccupied with the shitstorm of storytelling in front of me, I may have just missed it.
Costumes are divine. The makeup, the hair. Bon appetit.
Regardless, how the Zintrean army didn't realize this was all a setup is ridiculous. I mean, first you got the small dwarven girl in her little armor marching in, and nobody raises an eye as to why a dwarf is clad in elven armor. Not to mention that both Fial and Aile are being hunted by literally everyone across the continent, and they have their pictures plastered in every bar, castle, or town. Yet Aile marches in the front, may I add, with Fial to her side with her braids and her face completely visible to everyone around her, and no one notices her. You're telling me the most infamous person of interest in the continent just walked up to the gates of the Golden Empire, who's been hounding her the entire show, and they take one look at her beside Fial of all things, and they go, yeah, it's fine, just let them in.
Bon appetit.
This is the state of modern entertainment storytelling. I wish I could say I'm surprised, but I'd be lying. And now we are in the endgame with the stage set for the epic conclusion to this godforsaken limited series. We also see the princess that Fial smashed in the beginning is now the Empress of the Empire, having successfully betrayed and outmaneuvered every obstacle in her way. And she also ends up dying by Ile's hand and has one of the most cringe-inducing final moments where she pleads for her people to remember her, as they all run past her corpse to find food in the kitchen because they're hungry. It's so bad.
It's a show that's made with so much love, and that's really fun.
And as if that wasn't bad enough, Fial goes full Witcher mode and suddenly turns into a gray Hulk and kills the monster. But this then leads to Fial's rage consuming him as he becomes a monster himself and almost kills Brother Death, who's one of the main characters that I forgot to mention until right now because he does literally nothing the entire show. Like, I'm not kidding. He doesn't do anything. Anyway, Fial, now in his Hulk form, gets soothed by Ile and her music, which gave me PTSD flashbacks to Black Widow singing for the Hulk in Age of Ultron. Anyway, this ends up leading to Ile realizing that Fial can't be saved from his Witcher transformation and stabs him and kills him. Even though Witchers' bodies can survive all kinds of torture and pain, a simple stab wound kills the roided out Fial because it's convenient for the plot, I guess. Oh, I just remembered that before they storm the castle and all that, after Fial becomes a Witcher, he and Ile decide to smash and Ile gets pregnant. But it's also said in the books and games that Witchers, due to the mutagens and so on, become infertile and can't have kids of their own. Yet Fial somehow ends up shooting his seed all up into Ile, and I guess the only explanation for this would be that maybe because this is the first Witcher experiment, that it's imperfect, giving the Grey Hulk BS and all that, it doesn't make Fial infertile until later on when other Witchers get made. I guess?
It's a show that's made with so much love, and that's really fun.
But this doesn't change the fact that in this moment, a Witcher literally just impregnated someone, which is not possible. But really, this is all expensive fanfiction anyways, so who cares? Anyway, back to Fial getting stabbed. He eventually dies in the arms of Ile, and it's all very sad, or it would be if I actually cared about anything that was going on here. And the next big reveal is that amidst all of this chaos, Aradin is sent through a portal with his elven knights to invade another world, and the royal mage Baelor betrays Aradin and banishes him along with his party to some unknown world. And we later on see Aradin holding the skull of some unknown creature that conveniently fits over his head, and he becomes, I guess, the leader of the Wild Hunt. He even looks a little bit like he does in Witcher 3, but at this point, the damage done to the franchise is irreversible, so it doesn't matter. Anyways, Baelor ends up being consumed by the power of chaos by some unknown force, and he returns to Zentreia as a powerful wizard. Then Sindril, the guy who's responsible for the first Witcher nonsense and using the monoliths to open gateways, ends up getting into a battle with Baelor, and through their magical battle of headache-inducing nonsense, they end up overcharging the monolith, and boom. That's how the conjunction of the spheres happens. I'm not kidding. This overcharging of chaos magic by Baelor and Sindril ends up bringing about the events that merges the worlds of elf, man, monsters, and really bad writing.
It has the first kiss between two men in the show.
Not only is this a generic way to explain why the Witcher's world is what it is, but it's disappointing as well. Everything that happens in this show feels both unnecessary, laughable, and at worst, it's boring and a waste of your time. The only good character ends up dying, and the story moves forward 6 months later. And it's then revealed that Ile is pregnant with what will become the ancestor of Ciri. Yes, that's Ciri. Meaning Ciri's bloodline is descended from the first prototype Witcher and an elven bard who is very clearly not anywhere near the same ethnicity as Ciri. Oh yeah, and there's this random elven barmaid Ile meets in a random bar early on in the story, and she ends up being Ithelin, the future legendary elven healer and prophecy teller, because why not at this point? Who cares? In the end, Blood Origin is not only a terrible show, but it adds little to the overall world building of The Witcher. The characters are forgettable, the cast is way too big and underutilized, and the reveals and how they go about them are extremely generic. The worst part of all of this is that Blood Origin represents what Netflix and its writers want out of this franchise. The direction of this show is what the people behind The Witcher believe is worthy of standing shoulder to shoulder with characters like Ciri, Yennefer, and most importantly, Geralt of Rivia. No one in this show even comes close to Geralt in terms of memorable moments or anything else. Every character in this show and the events that transpired are going to likely be largely rejected and forgotten by not only the Witcher fanbase, but audiences at large. If anyone actually watches this in the first place, that is, which I doubt if I'm being honest. The fact they chose to make this over a prequel story about Geralt's parents, Corrin and Vicenna, is insane to me. You could have actually had a story that people would care about with established characters instead of this atrocity. We could have seen how Corrin and Vicenna would meet and end the show with the reveal that their child is Geralt, and that would have been great. But nah, here's how the conjunction happens instead, and it's awful. Honestly, it feels like a show made by people who clearly don't care or understand the source material and just saw it as an opportunity to push their own ideas while forgetting to make a compelling product in the first place. It's less House of the Dragon and a lot more like Rings of Power than anything. The only difference here is that Rings of Power, at the very least, had the money to have pretty decent special effects, where here it feels like a school play where actors are so clearly standing in front of green screens. Blood Origin is very much in line with the large cesspool of ruined franchise killers littered across the cinematic landscape. It may start off promising, but it quickly ruins any goodwill in an almost impressive way, if I'm being honest. So, should you watch Blood Origin? No. Frankly, I think The Witcher as a franchise, for Netflix at least, is going to be cancelled based on this atrocity. Sure, we have season 3 with Henry Cavill, but we know that he won't be there for season 4, so it's pointless knowing that Cavill won't return. I mean, the showrunner did beg everybody to watch so they can, and I quote, keep doing this, but they've proven time and again that they clearly don't care about this franchise. And like Cowboy Bebop before it, Netflix has successfully modern audience The Witcher into an early grave, and ruined the insane potential of a property that could have lived on for decades if only the people in charge actually gave a shit about what they had in the first place. It sucks because the two main characters and their actors, they had something there and that could have been explored, but it's all submerged by the dead weight of everything surrounding it. And in the end, it's a boring, lifeless, and endlessly meandering tale of forced identity politics, rejection of lore, and unneeded answers that makes The Witcher Blood Origin truly, in the end, dead on arrival and a bona fide franchise killer.
It's a show that's made with so much love, and that's really fun.